antifascister! Du och jag är antifascister!
The rise of political polarization and extremism can be traced back in part to the rise of fossil fuels in a capitalistic system.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to the Struggle Video News. Most of the program today will be about a climate protest, but we start with Israel-U.S. wars against people of the Middle East. With all the bad news to come, we begin with something positive. Greta Thunberg at an anti-war march wearing the now universal symbol of liberation, a keffiyeh. I held my nose on the night of the 27th and watched 2 channels of corporate news as the talking heads speculated on whether Israel had killed Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah. The Israelis blew up an entire block in Beirut, and neither channel mentioned the question of how many civilians had been killed. It was a residential neighborhood. The New York Times reported that at least 4 large apartment buildings had been destroyed. The Israeli military, which has every reason to undercount Arab casualties, estimated 300 people were killed. Of course, the Zionists will rail that Hezbollah hid among civilians. Do note that Israel's military headquarters, the Hakira, is located in the heart of Tel Aviv. This is a picture from Wikipedia. Rabin Yassin Kassab wrote on Twitter, "They whine about terrorism and at the same time give themselves the right to destroy multiple residential blocks in order to hit one man. Such genocidal fascism goes far beyond mere terrorism." He also showed video from Idlib, Syria, where people danced at the possible news of Nasrallah's death. Syrians bitterly blame Hezbollah for joining with Assad and killing thousands of Syrian civilians. The genocide prevention group, the Lemkin Institute, notes that the Israeli education minister made this comment this month. He said, "There is no difference between Hezbollah and Lebanon. Lebanon will be annihilated. It will cease to exist." We have mentioned in prior shows that there are Israelis hoping to settle southern Lebanon. Sympathetic people have posted on Facebook and Twitter Lebanese families, Lebanese civilians who had been wiped out in Israeli attacks. In Danbury, Connecticut, on the 27th, a small but vigorous protest.
No more wars!
Out of Gaza, out of Lebanon!
No more wars!
Out of Gaza, out of Lebanon! No more wars! Out of Gaza, out of Lebanon! No more wars! Out of Gaza, out of Lebanon, no more wars.
Out of Gaza, out of Lebanon, no more wars. Out of Gaza, out of Lebanon, no more wars.
This war is only the beginning. Gaza, West Bank, Lebanon, and the objective of the Israeli government is war with Iran. And they don't want to fight the war. They want U.S. soldiers to fight the war. This is not some abstract notion. We've seen U.S. soldiers coming home in body bags for stupid wars, for greedy wars, for things that make no sense. And that's what the Israeli government wants. To move on from Lebanon to a big, big war against Iran. One that'll go on for 30 years. And how many Americans will die in that war? October 7th is coming. You will be flooded with stories of Hamas atrocities. Some real, most made up. Recommend that you watch the Al Jazeera examination of what happened on that date. It came out in March. It shows Hamas military attacks which were much more successful than even they expected. Al Jazeera also says there were widespread atrocities on the part of armed forces coming out of Gaza, but it refutes many of the grotesque charges made by the IDF, Netanyahu, and Biden. Baby beheadings, mass rapes, and such. It is well worth watching. We'll link to it on our archive on Palestine and Israel. Now to Hartford, Connecticut, where activists are trying to get the state government to veto any kind of fossil fuel expansion.
So what we're doing here today is delivering a letter to Governor Lamont beseeching him on behalf of the legislators and town officials who signed on to this letter to direct his permitting agency, DEEP, to deny state air and water permits for any future or pending frac gas expansion projects. Yeah, that's what we're asking him to do. And that's what 33 legislators and town officials who signed on to the letter are asking him to do. And we believe this is a winning strategy, a way to hopefully in the future block Project Maple, which we'll probably file before FERC at some point, but also a way to block all of the current frac gas construction that's actually happening right now in our state, in Coventry and in lots of other places. So we believe that it's a winning strategy. But why are we not already there yet? If we know that government wants the same things, so Governor Lamont has gone on record saying we want an electric grid that's powered by 100% carbon-free power. And we need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in the state. And Governor Lamont has already said that, so we're already on the same page, right? But maybe we just haven't persuaded all the right people of the strategy of how we get there. Because we have to actually get there. And so the problem does appear to be that the private energy infrastructure, such as Enbridge, who has made this proposal to build Project Maple, their motivation is completely profit and greed and selfishness. So I want to introduce a couple of town elected officials who signed on to our letter, and I'm not going to talk about what Enbridge did to their town, because I'm assuming they will share that with us. But Enbridge, the company that's proposed Project Maple and is also doing all sorts of other infrastructure expansions, has a history in our state. Enbridge is a known polluter in our state. So I'm going to first introduce Deputy Mayor Waters and Cromwell Mayor Dimitriades.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is James Dimitriadis. I'm joined by Al Waters, who is our deputy mayor. I'm mayor of the town of Cromwell. And we stand today to express our opposition and concerns to the Algonquin pipeline and what they are calling Project Maple. As some of you may know, this pipeline runs through the town of Cromwell and many other communities across our state. And we are very concerned about the repercussions of these expansions. These pipes run through neighborhoods, they run near schools, they run through waterways, they run through town parks. We cannot risk increased environmental and health impacts from such an expansion as is being proposed. In Cromwell, we recently learned about venting that went over the legal limit in 2014 and 2016. Was the town informed of this overage? No. Were residents informed of this overage? No. Were the neighboring businesses or the school informed of the overage? No. And here we are 6 years later, 10 years later, finding out about it. Shame. And when we asked for the testing to be done regularly by an outside agency and for those results to be shared with the town, and when there is venting, we asked that residents, the schools, and the town be notified, they said they didn't have to do that. So, they want to expand this infrastructure. And in our view, when residents are exposed to gas discharges and other chemical toxins, it's unacceptable, period. Residents, schools, our families should not be left in the dark about what we are breathing in from these pollutants. These natural gas pipelines contain methane, volatile organic compounds, and hydrogen sulfide. Expansion of these pipes mean more of those chemicals coming through our communities. In a time where we should be shifting away from fossil fuels and investing in safe, sustainable infrastructure and safe, sustainable energy, we're moving backwards by expanding this type of infrastructure. The truth is, this project benefits a small number of corporations, while the risk is entirely borne by the people who live near the pipeline and all of us who are fighting for a sustainable future. This is not a local issue. This is not NIMBYism. It is part of a global struggle to transition away from harmful fossil fuels and towards a cleaner and healthier planet. We must all do our part to advocate to ensure that the choices made in our communities make a better and greener tomorrow. Thank you guys for your time.
Can you hear me while I'm at? Good. All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. Again, we're always in front of this building yelling about injustices that can so easily be fixed if the powers at work do what they have to do and do their job to ensure our safety and our wellness. Black and brown and low-income communities suffer far more from pollution, from transportation, energy generation, and industry that white and affluent residents suffer from. Hartford has significantly worse air pollution than West Hartford on most days. I live in Hartford. Yet those disproportionately harmed pay the same excess electricity rates as other Connecticut residents who breathe better air by virtue of their zip code and race. If you're a moderate income earner, person of color, you pay twice for electricity, once with your money and again with your health and the health of your children. Our health has no price tag, it's priceless. And I believe that we have the power. We're talking about these dirty powers, but it's us who has more power than pipelines, than solar, than electricity and wind. We have the power when we gather, when we educate, when we fight, when we work, we win. So I want us to keep gathering, keep educating each other, and keep coming together so people know. Because a lot of people don't know. They don't even know what a pipeline is. They thought that it stopped at DAPL all the way in the west. And it's like, no, these pipelines are here. These pipelines are poisoning us every day. People have to know. So education is the first step when you feel powerless. Just if you tell one person, that can make a difference. So remember that. We fight. When we fight, we win. Thank you so much.
And next, we're going to hear from, let's see, Sydney Collins and Senna Wazer are youth climate activists. They're both part of Stop Project Maple.
All right, hello. I have my computer because I don't have a smartphone. So you think we are more technically innovative as youth? You are wrong. But thank you so much for everyone being here today. My name is Sydney, and I'm an alumni of UConn and now employee, and a youth climate advocate. I want to start by sharing a bit about how I got into climate advocacy. For me, it didn't begin in the classroom or at a protest. It began at home. I grew up in a small rural town in Connecticut called Wellington. My home was surrounded by woods with distant neighborhoods on our cul-de-sac. While I grew my love for the outdoors, it was also wrought with small rural town problems. My mom and stepdad struggled with alcoholism and co-abuse, and like many rural communities, we had no public transit, no grocery store, a mediocre school system, and a lack of diversity. My mom and stepdad both worked in the car industry, and our lives were very car dependent, from driving to school to getting groceries and who wrote their paycheck. There was a lack of culture, and knowing who I am now, a huge lack of representation for my young queer self. When I first learned about the climate crisis, I was shocked. It sunk my heart. The trees, rain, and the stars were my sense of safety and community, and how could our planet be in harm's way and no one was doing anything about it? As I got older and my struggles with family intensified, I was really scared. I was scared of family chaos and scared of what our future held. And I learned to people please and hide my truth, thinking denial and avoidance was my way to hold on to safety. When I went to college and began studying environmental science, there was no way to avoid the truth anymore. It was staring me right in the face. While I had spent years avoiding tough conversations at home, I was facing an even bigger one with myself. How could I stay silent in the face of something so urgent and so pressing as the climate crisis? During late college, I found myself at the doorsteps of the Yukon recovery community, and I started to explore my own recovery. I was scared, but there was a sense of hope knowing that my home life could be more whole than the alcoholism, substance misuse, and loneliness that my home life grew to know. Recovery means being vulnerable, being scared, admitting I feel helpless, and asking for help. I was and am still terrified, and it means constantly challenging the defense mechanisms I have and still want to hold on to. However, recovery isn't easy, because the more I started to honor myself and my story, I had to honor the even more terrifying truths. The truth that we're in a climate crisis and young people have a future where they don't know how ugly it will be. Recovery has shown me what it actually means to feel alive and whole and connected, and how tragic is it at the same time my recovery has shown me that that is not guaranteed. Because in the face of the climate crisis, we see worsening storms, extreme heat, sea level rise, threatening the lives of million people today. Because big companies and governments have determined that the lives of young people are worthy of being abused. Even harder, my recovery has shown me that I'm not alone in my struggles and they're not my damn fault. Because there are layers of systemic problems and oppressive systems that we exist in that victimize so many communities with the worst or the same or worse struggles that I and my family face. From our economic system to racial violence to the brutalizing military industrial complex and so much more. I found that this fight we are showing up for today is more than just about fossil fuels. It's about justice and liberation and reclaiming our right to live. Because fossil fuels, they don't just fracture our land, they fracture our communities and strip us of our right to feel safe, connected, and whole. Rural communities like mine often suffer from high rates of alcoholism, community isolation, loneliness, which can be attributed to fossil fuels and the culture and system it supports. Studies show communities near extraction sites experience greater levels of isolation and up to 40% higher rates of substance misuse and mental health challenges. And this is specifically targeting low-income communities, communities of color, and indigenous communities. Communities of high levels of fossil fuel dependency report lower levels of community trust, destroying our social networks and support. And there's over 17 million people in the US that live within half a mile of fossil fuel infrastructure. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to lose anyone else to alcoholism, substance misuse, or suicide. This is not just a threat to our communities, but it's a threat to our fragile democracy. The rise of political polarization and extremism can be traced back in part to the rise of fossil fuels in a capitalistic system. Our fossil fuel industries prey on rural communities, infiltrating them with toxic culture of hyper-independence, economic instability, and exposure to toxins, leaving people feeling abandoned and desperate for connection and care. And right-wing groups know this, and they victimize people to extremist and violent ideologies in search for blame and feelings of belonging. But my friends, my brothers, my sisters, I'm here to tell you that it's not our fault. We live amongst industries and economic systems that thrive by exploiting our planet and our people. I stand with you today, fighting against projects like Project Maple and fossil fuel companies Enbridge that continue to harm communities like mine and like yours. When we fight against these industries, we're not just fighting for cleaner air or lower emissions, we're reimagining a world where we and our planet can heal. Where we can be liberated from the toxic systems and values that exploit us, and find justice for our peoples from the alcoholism, substance misuse, and violence that plagues us in our fossil fuel dependent world. So today, we fight for our recovery, for our community's recovery, for young people, and our generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Sydney, for sharing your story. I know that I found it incredibly touching and powerful, and I'm so grateful to call you both a friend and fellow activist. My name is Senna Wazer. I am a 20-year-old climate advocate. I'm originally from Mansfield, Connecticut. I grew up just a town over from Sydney. And I've been doing environmental advocacy for most of my life and fighting the climate crisis specifically for the last 6 years. And so I want to take a few minutes to take what Sydney talked about and connect it to some of the broader themes and issues that Project Maple and fossil fuel expansion bring to light. When I was 17 years old, I stood on the other side of the building as my friends laid in the grass as a symbol of protest against the proposed power plant in Killingly, Connecticut, and the harm that it would cause. I spoke about my sister and I, our dreams of the future, and what I was afraid would be impossible because of the climate crisis. I spoke about how people had been fighting this plant for years, fighting fossil fuels for far longer, and somehow the state was still letting it move forward. And I spoke about the world that we could create if we address the climate crisis and the issues that it intersects with the urgency that they demand. 3 years later, I stand here again with a similar message, but more urgency and anger and resolution. Because since then, the climate crisis has only worsened. The fracturing of communities by the fossil fuel industry that Sydney spoke to so eloquently has only become more pronounced and frightening and dangerous. That's true here in Connecticut, where storms are worsening, weather patterns are changing, and electricity bills are continuing to skyrocket. That's true in the US, where particularly Black and brown and low-income communities continue to be exploited by the fossil fuel industry. It's true globally in the way that global South countries bear a disproportionate burden of the crisis that was disproportionately caused by global North countries. And I also think it is really important to acknowledge and draw attention to the fact that the global atrocities that we witness on a daily basis are also tied to fossil fuels. Palestine, Gaza, it's a place that is rich with oil and gas, billions upon billions of dollars worth. And it's not just that, because as the Israeli military is committing genocide against the people, they are committing ecocide against the land, contaminating land and water, destroying agricultural fields, and leaving olive trees scorched, dried out, and dead. Yeah. Military conflict will also continue to get worse as resource scarcity and land conflict increase due to climate change. That's not to mention dropping bombs that are contributing significantly to the climate crisis. And so the climate crisis, the fossil fuel crisis, is a global crisis, a global injustice. And at the same time, it is one that we must fight not only globally, but also locally. In every town, in every state, in every country. And so I'm here today to call on Connecticut to step up. Our elected officials love to claim that they are committed to climate action, that they believe in the issue, they know it's urgent, they care about communities and the future. I'm afraid we're losing. But I am so tired of empty words. And so Governor Lamont, Connecticut officials, this is to you. Stop telling us you care and start acting like it. We're not judging you by your words and your promises, but by your actions. If you care about climate action, this is the time to prove it. By stopping Project Maple and canceling the expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure that our state does not need or want. If you care about young people and seeing us grow up in a state that is safe and secure, then this is the time to stop expanding the very thing that is ripping our future away as we speak. If you care about environmental justice communities who are already seeing the impacts of climate change, of fossil fuel destruction and environmental injustice, then this is the time to start investing in communities and not corporations. I believe that it is possible to build a state, a world that is just, where communities are not destroyed and torn apart by fossil fuels, where young people don't have to question whether or not they have a future, where children breathe clean air and play in a clean environment, where people have good jobs, where the government works for us, for our communities and health. I believe in that world. But I also believe that we will have to fight day in and day out to get there. 2 years ago, we successfully stopped the proposed gas-fired power plant, and I look forward to doing the same with Project Maple. I look forward to working with all of you to create a state that is just and sustainable, that moves us forward into the future rather than tying us to the energy of the past. Thank you.
So next we're going to hear very briefly about another frac gas expansion project which is pending, and we are asking Governor Lamont to direct the DEEP to deny air and water permits for that, and that's in Brookfield. Is Carrie here from Brookfield here?
Carrie Swift, I'm a Brookfield resident. We've been fighting this expansion basically for 30 years. We will be affected by Project Maple, so we really want that stopped. We have two 1953 Algonquin pipelines running through our town. Very concerning. They meet up 1,900 feet, that's why you'll see the website 1900feet.org, behind our middle school on a little dead-end road. They meet up with a pipeline Iroquois, which is actually TC Energy, which brings fracked gas from Canada down to Long Island and New York City. We have 2 compressor stations presently. They're trying to make it 4. They're out of noise compliance, the pollution. We're very, very concerned about our children's health. My kids have gone through the middle school already, but I live close to, within a mile of the neighborhood. And we're just very, very concerned about this. We're concerned about our drinking water, which is actually wells, and they can contaminate that with impunity. FERC is not our friend. They're supposed to be watching out for us in Washington, and they don't listen, they don't respond, and they don't care, and we need to vote accordingly and have some power back. So we need to stop Project Maple, and we need to also have DEEP deny the air permit that Iroquois is waiting for in Brookfield. Thank you.
Power from the wind and sun. Fossil fuels are all done. Power from the wind and sun. Fossil fuels are all done. Power from the wind and sun. Fossil fuels are
ever gonna do anything for Palestine?
That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for the Struggle Video News.